Hello dear learners, today we are going to discuss about database management system. The objective of this lecture is to understand what is database management system, what is file system, and what is the difference between storing data in database management system and file system, and when to use them. So as the name implies, database is a place where some data are stored, and the management system is the related software which manages the database. Together, both the database and the management system provides a complete solution for storing data. This management system includes lots of functions, lots of tools which are used to process the data and get the required query. Database is used everywhere. Every application that need accessing of data from some place uses a database. Database is nothing but a large collection of related data. Remember, here we have a term called related data. Means there must be a relation between all the data which are stored in the database. A typical database models our real world organizations. For example, your university or a company. In company or university, you have different sections for different jobs. In the same way, database have various sections for doing various jobs. The main component of database are entities and their relationships. Entities are the main actors of the database. For example, in a student-related database, student is an entity, subject can be an entity, semester can be an entity, teachers can be an entity, and relationship is the relation among those entities. For example, here Martin is taking IDS in 2010-11. Here Martin is an entity, IDS is an entity, and the year is an entity. This taking and in is a relationship. Some more example where database is used is personal records in an university or in an organization are stored in a database. All the banking sector uses database. All the airlines use database for reservations. As the organization changes, the database also changes. Sometimes it may require that in organization some changes are made in the structure of the hierarchy of the organization. In the same way, the same thing happens in the database. There are various types of databases. Databases are used in different fields of technology and sciences. Databases are used in biology, astronomy, physics, and various other fields. The databases are used for DNA sequencing in biology, which can take up to a space of several gigabytes. Similarly, the database used in astronomy for various purposes can take up to several terabytes. Similarly for the physics, in fact the size of the database can go up to petabytes. When we carefully observe the database, we may conclude that the size of the database grows as the time passes. It is because more amount of data are used to store in the databases. And also the databases have become more widespread. There are various applications nowadays which uses databases. Then nowadays multimedia consumption has become a very big trend. For storing those multimedia contents, you require large amount of data. In fact, various application which uses multimedia distribution uses some sort of databases. In those databases, if you do some humming of some song, you can easily search that particular song. Also, there are data in the web, for example, Facebook, etc. are using databases to keep track of all the peoples and their activities. There are various operations of databases. We can do multiple jobs or multiple things with the databases. We can design a databases, we can construct a database, we can manipulate the data in the given database. In the design part, we can define the structure and types of the data. If we want to use the primitive data, we can use, or you can create our own data type as per our requirement. Similarly, we can define the structure of the database and populate the database with the data. Then we have got already ready-made instructions for insert, delete and update. These are readily available with the database. This part is normally handled by the database management software. Also, we can do multiple number of queries in the database, and also as per requirement we can generate reports from the database. We may have various expectations from the databases, but there are some ideal expectation or ideal database implementation which must support some jobs which are as follows. The database must be properly structured. This means the database must support various types of data types, and the data should behave as per the given data types. Data should be stored in the secondary drive. If the database stores the data in the primary memory or some other volatile memory, then that data is of very rare use. There must be some query language which can help retrieve the data from the database, and also there must be some procedural language so that you can do programming. Also, in terms of performance, the database should be able to retrieve and store the data quickly as much as possible, and also the data integrity must be maintained. The concurrency is one of the most important aspects of a database. Nowadays, multiple applications or multiple instances of applications uses a single database, because of which a data is accessed concurrently. If the data is inconsistent at a given particular time, then for the same instant of time, different application will have different values of that data, which is not expected, or in fact, in other words, it will give a wrong result. That's why there must be some consistency so that concurrency is carried out correctly. Also, the reliability and resilience of the database is very much important, and of course, the database must support a large amount of data. So till now we have seen what database is and what are the expectations of people from the database. Now we have database management system. Database management system is a software package designed to store and manage the databases. See, database management system used to manage and store the databases. This means database management system or DBMS are the set of the rules, or it is a software which manages databases. A DBMS can manage multiple number of databases. A DBMS provides generic functionality that otherwise would have to be implemented over and over again. Generic functionality means insertion, deletion, updation, creation of tables are the generic functionality. Each and every database management system are expected to provide such kind of operations. There are various brands of databases. For example, we have Oracle, XI and YG, which are from Oracle itself, and also IBM provide DB2. Then we have SQL Server. Then we have got Microsoft SS. Then we have got PostgreSQL. Then we have got MySQL. This one, SQLite, is an open source software. It is freely available. You can download also and you can use it without any licensing. This diagram or this figure shows various actors involved in database and its management. There are some actors which act on the front of the screen and some of them act behind the scene. Database designer, application programmers, database administrator and end users are the people who work with the database, and we can easily see their contribution. But these four types of people is not enough for handling and managing a database. For that, we need more number of people or more number of human resource whose job is to develop tools or developing the DBMS itself. There are operator and maintenance personnel. Till now we have seen what a database is and what a database management system is. We have also seen various expectations from a typical database management system. Now we will discuss what is storing a data in a file system be like, or what is the difference between storing data in a file system and a database management system. A file system is a software that manages and organizes the file in a storage medium within a computer. This is the structure of a file. So in the structure, for the file system and for the DBMS, we use storage media. In the storage media, we have directories. They are predefined, and in those directories, we have user-defined directories. And in those user-defined directories, we used to store files, and that file contains our data. Whereas a DBMS is a software for managing the database. It is a software, and file system is stored in storage medium. And in file system, redundant data can be present. So for redundancy, yes, there can be redundant data in a file system, but in DBMS normally there is no redundant data. Also, the file system doesn't provide any backup and recovery of data if it is lost. So, backup and recovery is not available in file system, whereas in DBMS we have provisions of having backup and recovery of data even if it is lost. So it is there. And in terms of query processing, there is no efficient query processing mechanism in file system. Very little. Whereas there is efficient query processing mechanism in database management system. And in terms of consistency, the consistency of data in a file system is very less, whereas consistency in the database management system is much more, because we use a process called normalization. Remember the term normalization. We'll see it in the future lectures, what normalization is and how do we do normalization and what are the various types of normalization. This normalization basically is a method for providing consistency in the database. And in terms of complexity, the complexity of file system is relatively less as compared to that of database management system. Whereas the complexity of handling database is much more as compared to that of file system. This means DBMS is more complex than your typical file system. Also, another concern is security. The file system has very less or fewer security mechanism, whereas a database has more security mechanisms. The cost of file system is very less, whereas the cost of DBMS is much more higher. And also in terms of data, there is no data independence, whereas data independence exists in DBMS. So these are the basic differences of a typical file system and a DBMS system. So obviously DBMS has got many more advantages than file system, but in all places DBMS is not used, especially when there is only single application for a very small amount of data, or there is single user. In that case, file system is economical. But for handling large amount of data, we need to have DBMS. Now getting back to the topic, here in the file system, the interface something looks like this one. Say here there is a student or admin which need to store some data. They collect the data from some places and store them sequentially or in some way in the file in some directory. Similarly for the scheduler and payroll also. Now if the student or the admin wants to search the data, they have to search all the given data or files. Similarly, one more, as I have already mentioned, the redundancy problem. There are redundancy problem in file system. because, say for example here, student admin for lab timetable, tutorial schedules, they require some data. Those data will be stored in different files. Student will have a separate file for the same data. Similarly, for scheduler or for teaching schedule, we have the same data in different files. So there is a replication of data, which increases the size. As the size increases, the management of the file system becomes very cumbersome or difficult. This is the logical interface of a database management system. Here, this is the database management system. These are the, say, entities. If these entities want some data, they will inquire it to the database management system. This database management system will have one or more databases. They will access them and they will provide the result to the entities. So again, here these are the list of disadvantages of a file system approach. There are uncontrolled redundancy, there are inconsistent data, there are inflexibility, there are limited data sharing, there are poor enforcement of standards. There's another problem with file system is low programming productivity, excessive programming maintenance is required, excessive data maintenance is required. So these are the basic problem with a file system approach. And DBMS approach have got the advantages. Advantages are this one. Firstly, it has got a controlled redundancy. It's not that there is no redundancy in the database. Redundancy is required because if the database is lost, so that we can create that database again. There are data integration, there are data and operation sharing interfaces are there. There are several services and controls. There are much more flexibilities are there. So when do we use a file system based application? So when do we use file system based data storage? When the application is simple, or it is stringent real time, or there is single user, or if the web page or something is static, then we use file system. There are demerits with database management system. Those demerits are, they are more expensive, they are more complex, and they are more generalized. So in summary, we can say that in a file system, data is physically accessed but not integrated. Okay, and also in DBMS, the data is logically accessed and they are integrated. And we have query language and data dictionary to assist our data queries. So in today's lecture, we have learned what a database is, what a database management system is, and we have also learned what are the expectations are there from DBMS, that is database management system, and we have learned what are the difference between a file system based data storage and a DBMS. So that's all for today. Thank you.